This video is brought to you by AmerUSA.com, where you can screen tenants 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. In this episode, we will be discussing Wisconsin landlord tenant laws. The following is a summary of landlord tenant laws in the state of Wisconsin as they apply to residential rental property. Topics include disclosures, withholding rent, the right to enter, security deposits, eviction, increasing rent, and more. Required disclosures. Contact information. A landlord must disclose to the tenant in writing at or before the time a rental agreement is signed the name and address of the person or persons authorized to manage and maintain the premises and who can readily be contacted by the tenant, as well as the address of the owner of the premises or agent in Wisconsin to accept service of process, notices, and demands. Access to property. If a landlord wants to enter the premises for reasons not specified by law, those reasons must be disclosed in a separate written document entitled Non-Standard Rental Provisions before the rental agreement is signed. Utilities. If charges for water, heat, or electricity are not included in the rent, the landlord must disclose this fact to the tenant before entering into a rental agreement or accepting any money. If individual dwelling units and common areas are not separately metered, and if the charges are not included in the rent, the landlord must also disclose the basis on which charges for utilities will be allocated to each unit. Outstanding code violations. Before signing a rental agreement or accepting money, the landlord must disclose any personally known outstanding code violations which affects the dwelling unit or common areas and poses a significant threat to the tenant's health or safety. This disclosure consists of showing prospective tenants the portions of the building affected, as well as the notices themselves. Abandoned property. If a landlord intends to immediately dispose of any tenant property left behind after move-out, the landlord must notify the tenant at the time the lease is signed. It's also important to note that a landlord must hold prescription medications and medical equipment for 7 days and must give notice before disposing of vehicles or manufactured homes to the owner and any known secured party. Move-in inspection. The tenant has a right to inspect the rental and give the landlord a list of defects and to receive a list of damages for which the prior tenant was charged. Security deposit limit. Wisconsin statutes do not provide a limit, but before accepting the deposit, the landlord must inform the tenant of his or her inspection rights, disclose all habitability defects including any outstanding building and housing code violations, inform the tenant of the means by which shared utilities will be billed, and inform the tenant if utilities are not paid for by the landlord. Deadline for returning a security deposit. Landlords are allowed 21 days to return the deposit after the tenant vacates. Late fees. In order to charge a late fee, a provision must have been included in the lease addressing when it can be charged and how much. Increasing rent. A 28-day advance notice is required to change any aspect of a month-to-month rental agreement. Leases of a longer duration must address any increases in writing in order to be valid. Withholding rent. If the premises become untenable because of damage by fire, water, or other casualty, or because of any condition hazardous to health, the tenant may terminate unless the landlord acts promptly to repair the premises and the conditions and timing don't pose an undue hardship. If staying, the tenant is then entitled to have the rent partially reduced to the extent the premises cannot be fully used. Terminating tenancy and eviction. A 14-day unconditional notice to quit may be used for month-to-month tenants that fail to pay rent, violate the rental agreement, or cause substantial damage to the property. A 14-day unconditional notice to quit may also be used for those tenants with a lease of less than 1 year or year-to-year for failing to pay rent on time, causing substantial property damage, or violating any lease provision more than once within 1 year. Proper notice must have been issued for the first violation. An unconditional 5-day notice to quit may be used for any tenant causing a nuisance on the property, but a law enforcement agency must have issued a written report regarding the nuisance. All other notices must be served with a 5-day conditional notice to cure or quit. The right to enter. The law states that advance notice must be given prior to entry, but no time frame is mentioned. As a general rule, 24 to 48 hours is sufficient. For more information, additional laws and articles can be found at AmericanLandlord.com.